if you're not going to be working this year, I want to make a solo album. Of course, I wasn't happy about that.
Singing star Karen Carpenter died today of an apparent heart attack at the age of 32.
Herb Alpert faced the crowd, his voice shaking. He drew a breath, then whispered, "I was wrong." The room froze. With one line, he cracked open 40 years of silence, admitting that the hands that lifted Karen Carpenter into glory also crushed her boldest dream. The tale slices deep, because it is not just two artists clashing. It is a hidden sorrow behind a shining legacy, the shadow that followed that bright, unforgettable voice. In 1979, the Carpenters slammed on the brakes. Richard Carpenter stepped away to battle a serious Quaalude habit, leaving his sister free for the first time in her career. Karen, 29 and restless, dashed to New York City. She teamed with producer Phil Ramone, the wizard behind Billy Joel and Barbra Streisand, to craft a solo record. "If you are not working this year, I want to cut my own album," she told Richard. He admitted the idea stung, yet Karen pressed on. She rejected the soft, safe sound that radio had married to her name. She hunted for grown-up songs with bite and bold harmonies. Tracks such as "If I Had You," "My Body Keeps Changing My Mind," and "Making Love in the Afternoon" revealed a braver Karen. She was fierce, confident, and no longer hiding behind drums or a shy grin. The sessions devoured almost $400,000, mostly from Karen's own purse. Night after night, she guided top musicians, studied every take, and approved each mix. Phil Ramone said she was no longer a guest. She was the boss who called every shot. Months later, the album was done. Karen felt certain it would reset her image. Then the first storm hit. Richard heard the tapes and frowned. The sound, he said, did not match what fans adored about the Carpenters. The chiefs at A&M Records gathered. Herb Alpert held the final vote. Their verdict landed like a hammer. The record would stay locked away. Executives claimed it lacked chart hits and wandered too far from the brand listeners expected. The album did not have a hit, and we could not release it. "It had nothing to do with me," Richard later insisted. For years, Herb Alpert spoke only in tiny phrases about that choice. He simply felt the music was not ready. Karen, crushed, returned to the duo in 1980, as though nothing had happened, but friends noticed a change. She grew quieter, guarded, and almost never spoke of the solo dream again. That studio in New York crackled with energy. Top session players drifted into laid-down lines, while Karen guided every note. She picked warmer keys that hugged her voice, then leaped into crystal highs that left engineers in awe. Late nights found Karen and Ramone sipping tea, replaying mixes, and laughing about breaking her old mold. She scribbled tweaks on yellow pads and chased perfect echoes because her name alone would shine on the jacket. News of the project leaked to Los Angeles. Publicists fretted that fans might feel abandoned, and marketers wondered where to slot Karen between disco beats and new wave hooks. Tension set the stage for a fateful showdown. Inside A&M headquarters, Karen waited outside the door, clutching cassette. Executives whispered about charts while the record played. When they stepped out, their no hit like cold rain, draining hope from her face. That night she drove the Hollywood Hills alone, tears blurring the lights, holding the master tape no one else would hear for years. She still rehearsed with Richard, yet friends saw her sparkle fade. When reporters asked about new songs, she simply smiled and said, "We have plans," then walked away. 13 years slipped by before the public finally heard those songs. In 1996, the disc Karen Carpenter hit the shelves. Critics gasped. Her voice sounded richer and more daring than ever. Many argued the record, released in 1980, could have reshaped her career and handed her full artistic control. Regret echoed through every article. Little Girl Blue, a leading biography, called the solo set Karen's last chance to do something for herself. To lifelong fans, the album proved she was not just a gentle background voice. She was an artist with choices. The complete truth of that boardroom decision remains hidden. What is clear is that a system built to protect an image failed to stand beside her when she reached for freedom. It was no open betrayal, but a cautious retreat that shattered her trust forever. Tragedy struck on February 4th, 1983. Karen collapsed at her parents' home in Downey, California. Doctors rushed her to hospital, but she died at 9:51 that morning. She was only 32. The medical report blamed heart failure triggered by emmetine, the compound in ipecac syrup. Years of strain left her heart too weak to recover. Even after gaining 30 pounds from her lowest weight, the damage was done. Blood tests showed sugar levels 10 times higher than normal, revealing a violent metabolic storm inside her body. The roots reached back to the mid-70s. While record sales soared, Karen began dropping pounds for stage shows. The diet spun out of control. She counted every calorie, refused food in public, and leaned on extreme tools like diuretics, laxatives, crash diets, and marathon workouts. Reports claim she once took 90 laxative tablets in one night. No one used the term eating disorder then. The media lacked the language. Karen never publicly acknowledged the struggle either. Family thought she was simply chasing thinness. The public praised her slim frame, convincing her she was winning, all the while her body was waving silent red flags. By the time help arrived, it was too late. Karen Carpenter's radiant voice fell silent, leaving haunting questions about talent control and the crushing weight of image. It was 1981, and the fight for Karen Carpenter's life took a daring new turn. After heartfelt pleas from friends and family, she finally walked into the office of New York therapist Stephen Lavin, a specialist in eating disorders, hoping he could pull her back from the edge. The road was brutal and full of setbacks. Karen skipped some sessions and often strayed from her meal plans, yet Dr. Lavin noticed tiny sparks of change, especially in the way she spoke about food and her own reflection. For the very first time, she tried to see meals as fuel, not enemies. By September 1982, the warning lights flashed bright red again. Exhausted to the bone, Karen collapsed in Los Angeles and spent 2 full months in hospital, hooked to intravenous feeds that slowly pushed her weight upward. Doctors cheered as her cheeks filled out, her laugh returned, and her energy seemed to bloom, convinced that recovery was finally winning. But deep inside her chest, a damaged heart beat unevenly, whispering danger no stethoscope caught. Years of starvation and risky medicines had weakened the very muscle that kept her alive, and no one sensed the ticking clock until the moment it stopped. One debate still burns decades later. Did Karen secretly swallow ipecac syrup to purge her meals? Dr. Lavin and her family swear no such bottle was ever found at home, yet toxicology tests revealed emmetine, the key compound in ipecac, still flowing in her blood. Some physicians believe she hid the syrup with fierce secrecy, while others claim the lab were flawed or contaminated. The evidence never lined up neatly, leaving the real answer locked away forever. News of Karen's death jolted the entire country, and even the wider world of pop culture. Most people had never even heard the term anorexia nervosa until headlines tried to explain what stole her voice. Viewers replayed old performances, watching the bright glow close to you fade into the frail figure of her final shows, and finally understood the silent war she fought alone. To honor her struggle, the Carpenter family launched the Karen A. Carpenter Memorial Fund, pushing money and attention toward research on eating disorders. Her story now fills medical textbooks, documentaries, feature films, and classroom lessons, forcing the entertainment world to rethink how it talks about women's bodies. Stars like Madonna, Sheryl Crow, and Alanis Morissette later said that Karen's voice and her hidden battle reshaped their own paths to mental health. Some insiders call what happened an unwanted sacrifice. Karen never planned to be a symbol, yet her tragedy flung open a door that had been bolted shut for too long, waking an industry that prized slim silhouettes over living souls. Herb Alpert, the quiet architect behind the Carpenters' meteoric rise, enters the tale here. He was not their daily producer, yet in 1969, when most executives at A&M Records rolled their eyes, he heard Karen's rich, slightly husky tone and thought, "This is something you can't miss." He signed the siblings on the spot. Alpert watched their climb from the shadows, stepping in at every critical moment. When their first album offering flopped, he urged them to keep swinging. When Richard Carpenter hunted for a hit single, Alpert nudged him toward They Long to Be Close to You, a tune that lit up every radio dial from coast to coast. Need sharper studio players? He called the legendary Wrecking Crew and put them right behind the siblings. Yet his bond with Karen stayed mostly professional, forged through melodies rather than chatter. They were rarely photographed together, and co-workers remember only a handful of private talks. But Karen held deep respect for the man who believed in her before anyone else did. Their most poignant exchange happened late in 1982, mere weeks before disaster. Karen dropped by the A&M offices and found Alpert in the hallway. She raised a hand, flashed that bright grin, and joked, "Hey, Herbie, look at me, are you okay?" Alpert later recalled she looked radiant, her hair styled, eyes sparkling like morning sunlight. He walked away certain she had beaten her demons and was ready to record again. No hint of the storm inside her fragile body. 2 weeks later, a phone call carried the worst news imaginable. Karen Carpenter had died from heart failure. Alpert felt a crushing wave of grief mixed with bewilderment, unable to grasp how close he had stood to tragedy without seeing it. For 30 long years, he kept that pain to himself. Then in 2012, while performing at the Café Carlyle, Alpert introduced a song, bowed his head, and suddenly burst into tears. The room fell silent. Through sobs, he managed only one line, "I miss her, I really miss her." It was not a polished tribute, but raw evidence of a heart still broken. In later interviews, he praised Karen as an unrepeatable voice, someone who could hush a room with a single note. But when reporters pressed about her rejected solo album, he sidestepped, saying, "I don't think it reflects who she was." Asked how her death blindsided everyone, he sighed. It was something that no one saw coming. That hush lasted more than 4 decades, until March 2025. Inside a packed Boston theater, Herb Alpert, now 90, lowered his trumpet and addressed the crowd. He spoke of their last meeting, her bright eyes, her confident smile. "I thought she would come back," he confessed, voice cracking. But she didn't. No long explanation followed. Yet those words showed he had carried a silent weight for 40 years and was finally ready to set it down, even if the mystery remained. Silence can thunder louder than any trumpet blast. Herb Alpert's careful pauses speak volumes, and when he finally opens up, every syllable lands like a drum hit. He never excuses a doomed solo album, and he never hides a pain Karen carried. Yet at 90, his lone public tribute proves that his long hush is stitched into the drama itself. Empire, the forced voice. A&M Records sprang to life in 1962 inside a humble garage behind a Hollywood bungalow. Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss trusted their ears more than balance sheets, promising artists a playground free from stiff boardrooms and slow committees. That promise lured fresh rebels. Carole King, Cat Stevens, Joe Cocker, the Police, and of course the Carpenters all squeezed through that narrow doorway and found it flung wide. In 1969, Karen and Richard Carpenter mailed a simple demo to A&M. Most executives heard Lil Punch, calling the sound too light, too sweet, and unfit to battle roaring rock and deep funk. Alpert disagreed the instant he caught Karen glide through Your Wonderful Parade, a tune that glimmered with clean innocence yet hinted at hidden strength. Without a single meeting, he offered a contract on the spot, one of the fastest and smartest bets the label ever made. Alpert did not twist knobs every day, but he watched the siblings like a vigilant guardian. He suggested fresh orchestral touches, connected them to Los Angeles session elites, and whispered release dates. He even placed Richard in charge if they longed to be close to you. A Burt Bacharach number that ruled the Billboard Summit for 4 blazing weeks and painted the nation in soft harmonies. That success, however, came with an unwritten bargain. The Carpenters were expected to stay gentle, bright, and safe, an image that matched the label's widening brand. As the 70s roared, A&M ballooned from garage startup to global corporation with glass towers, bustling apartments, and quarterly profit goals. Boardroom charts began steering creative calls, and the old open-door policy shrank behind layers of assistance and forms. What started as playful flexibility hardened into a single polished mold. The Carpenters' clean image became a golden seal no one dared to crack. So when Karen dared to chase a disco-tinged solo record packed with modern grooves and daring lyrics, shockwaves rattled corridors. Managers feared that a sharper beat and a more mature message might fracture the porcelain brand they had spent years polishing. Alpert never birthed that fear, yet he held the last word. Locked between saving an artist's evolution and guarding the label consistency, he shielded the label, Decades later, he admitted that the family feeling of early A&M had drifted into memory as desks multiplied. Artists no longer strolled into his office with wild ideas. Decisions now traveled through layers of suits, graphs, and marketing slogans. Voices had to squeeze into shapes pre-approved by trend reports. Karen's solo rejection became the loudest alarm of that transformation. A company once famous for daring leaps now bolted the gate when one of its brightest dared to step sideways. For Karen, that no cut deeper than lost airplay. It told her that the refuge she trusted had rebuilt its walls without warning. Her heartbreak cannot be divorced from the gears of the system itself, and Herb Alpert, though gentle, was still a gear at the very center. Remaining heritage. Almost 50 years after Karen Carpenter's voice fell silent, her songs continue to float from car radios, grocery aisles, and late-night playlists. We've only just begun Superstar, and rainy days and Mondays rise each holiday season like familiar constellations, still in their original form, warm, deep, and balanced to a breath. Karen never chased sky-high fireworks or vocal gymnastics. She mastered stillness, sculpting each word with careful breath control. Many peers and later icons studied that restraint and learned that power can whisper. Rolling Stone once placed her among the top 100 singers on Earth, while NPR praised her as one of the most distinctive female voices in American pop history. Even young internet singers sample her lines on social media, chasing the same gentle resonance she mastered. New fans discover her daily. Her passing closed one door and opened another. Since 1983, Richard Carpenter has searched dusty shelves, remastering unreleased gems, holiday specials, and studio chatter. Each rediscovered take widens the portrait of what Karen left behind. Fans now realize that the vault still holds surprises, alternate vocal runs, playful rehearsal chatter, even rare live mixes where Karen tested new arrangements before crowds of screaming teens. Engineers have lovingly restored tape hiss, repaired oxide flake, and rebuilt mixes in high definition so future ears can meet her voice freshly. She is gone, yet her music feels ever present, and sometimes a late-spoken tear, like Alpert's cracking whisper, "I miss her, I really miss her," shines a spotlight on listening itself. The story warns us to pay attention before silence falls, because once a note fades, no memory can fully replay its first perfect ring.